Hi, and welcome back to Creative Live. My name is Kate Dessa. I am your host today for another new class. We're excited to have Chris Converse, one of our veteran instructors, back teaching a new subject. Today, we are launching 360-degree photo editing in Photoshop with compositing. So, welcome to the show, Chris. Excited to have you back for another new class.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is super fun. I've been
Yeah.
waiting to do a 360 class. This is great.
Yeah, so let's just dive right in because some of your other classes are all based in graphic design. This has some graphic design elements to it, but tell us a little bit about the impetus to this 360 class.
Yeah. Yeah. So graphic design really is sort of the reason I kind of got into this. I was first time I saw 360. I was with my friend Rocky Montez-Carr in Vegas, and he had this 360 camera, and so I was immediately enthralled with it. And the first thing I wanted to do, of course, was put a logo in there and edit it and change it. And there wasn't any way to really do that because if you put artwork in there and you didn't map it into the sphere properly with 3D tools, wouldn't look right. And so then pretty shortly after that, Adobe released tools in Photoshop and After Effects to let you start to do that in a very visual way. And then you could bring all your graphics in there. So then we could start branding them and putting additional artwork in there. And I just thought that was super cool.
Yeah, so when was that? When did you get into 360 photos?
I guess about late 2017. And the other thing that was really interesting is, Facebook started supporting that technology pretty early. So, even my mom was, looking around in 360 photos, and it would just billions of people were doing this now. So, that just sort of led the way to how do you enhance these and make them look better and put branding in them and, just make them more interesting. And then the workflows have gotten a lot better over the last 2 years with how you can start to work with these and the number of cameras. There's tons of cameras that can do this and apps on your phone. And it's just become really accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. And so tell me a little bit, I remember, it was probably about the same time when someone brought a 360 camera to the Creative Live studio in Seattle or in San Francisco actually. And it was at that time, it just felt like a novel technology that you weren't really sure how it was going to get implemented and used. But now you're seeing 360 and VR photos used all sorts of ways. And what I see is that it's a really valuable thing for brick and mortar small businesses. And that's what it seems like a lot of the work you do in this class is really to help small businesses help give that whole virtual experience when someone can't be taking a tour of their Airbnb or their coffee shop, what have you. Tell me a little bit more about, what 360 images are used for nowadays.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. Automobiles, Airbnb, any type of hotel industry. I'm forgetting the word for hotels. But any place you're going to go to, resorts, taking tours of campuses, some of the examples that I think you're going to be showing soon. We took pictures at, OSU campus, the Lake Moore, which is the part of the After Effects version of the class. And they really just let you sort of experience what that whole area is like. And in addition to Facebook enabling these automatically, Google added this as part of their Street View technology. So, even before all of this became a big deal, we had Street View in Google Maps, so you could sort of look around in the street. It's the same idea. It's all VR. And then if you made a VR image, you could put that into your profile, and that becomes something people can see. And that's where the project for this course even came from. Track 3, microbrewery, uses this image as the image you see if you search them on a map and go through. So that really helps small businesses. They can really sort of up level their ability to explain what they do, show their environment, get you to come out and, check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to remind everyone that they're watching the live kickoff for Chris's brand new class, Retouching and Compositing 360-degree photos in Photoshop. You are tuning in, and if you are tuning in from social media, make sure you click on the link that I just dropped in the comments, and that will take you over to the class that starts at 9:30 sharp, and you can learn all about how you edit photos in Photoshop like this. So if you are tuning in from social media or you're watching on the course page, excuse me, make sure you share with us where you're watching from. Chris, where are you located right now?
Just north of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania.
All right, nice. I'm where I usually am in Las Vegas. So tell us where you're watching, and let's jump into looking at a couple 360 photos. So tell us about this shot, Chris.
Okay, so this was super fun. So one of the things that I recommend using is an extendable tripod. So I use like a monopod. Am I still on camera?
Oh, no, we're looking at the photo right now.
I'll show you that in a minute. So you can see I'm kind of holding it in the lower right there. And so we're on a lake. This is actually at the Lake Moore Retreat. And it took us longer to sort of get all of our kayaks lined up so that I could hold the camera up and take a quick picture. A lot of these cameras take an entire 360 in one shutter stop. So you just get everybody close, hit it once. Then, of course, we can bring it into Photoshop and make all the changes. And it just adds a whole different dimension to this. Yeah. So when we share this, you're kind of looking, you can see some of the tips of the kayaks by default. And then on Facebook or wherever you're viewing this, you can sort of pan around and see everybody and get a sense of what's going on there.
Yeah, it's totally different to look at it in this sense than it is when you can actually like move around. And I think that's where people really, you almost forget that's an entirely new style of photo because we've like Google and Facebook have integrated it so well that you're like just automatically kind of doing it. And to look at this kind of static, non-movable form of these photos is kind of fun to see what it looks like when you're not able to do the movement.
Right. Yeah, I think people see a lot of them sort of unwrapped like this, where they're sort of flattened out, not in their sphere, and people will be like, that image looks a little weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, you have to sort of look at it in its intended nature.
So tell me a little bit, I know Google and Facebook do 360 photos, mostly focused to help small businesses do tours. But like you said, on Facebook, you can share photos and look at everybody's faces in a different angle, which is really cool. What other platforms do these style of photos and tours that you can, that would be helpful to shoot 360 photos on?
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. There are a bunch of different platforms. There are platforms that will host your 360 photos, almost like YouTube for 360, so you can embed them as an iframe into your web page. There are free JavaScript frameworks that will allow you to take a 360 and put it right into your web page with just a couple lines of code. I talk about that in the class as well and give you information about where you can find more about that. And that just really lends itself to the fact that this ability to take that flattened image, wrap it back up into a sphere and display it, that's all Facebook and Google are doing, all, not that it's easy, but, those players are in place already. But you can do it on a standard web page now, and there's lots of services. Twitter's been saying for a while they're going to support them natively, and I wish that my, Android and iOS phone would just support them right in the Photos app. They don't yet.
Yeah.
But that's not where people are sharing them. They're seeing them on social platforms. If you go to an Airbnb or a hotel and they don't have a 360, you're upset.
Yeah, that is
like
true.
You want to see that.
So without really realizing it, we've gotten used to this ability to like really check out before we check out a product or home or a car before we go and actually commit our time to spending our time and money somewhere. So it's pretty cool how this type of technology has really helped, small businesses that weren't online really transition to captivating people's eyes online in a way that I don't think anyone was really expecting.
Yeah. And then if you think about what you can do to augment these, like in the course, we add, the hours of operation into the image, because, there's a lot of ceiling, you're getting the entire environment, not everything's interesting to look at. Plus, if you imagine the experience, somebody's searching, they find this, they're now looking at your establishment, put more information in there, point things out, change the pictures on the wall, tell people when you're open. I don't see this very much. And I think it's because people just aren't, maybe it's intimidating or, I don't know, but you can do all this right in Photoshop. So, I want to like spin a car around and have a little arrow that points at the radio and tells me, or all the components and what's
Yeah,
included in here. It should be completely exploratory.
absolutely. And that's what this class is all about, is basically you have these cool photos, but how do you make them more interactive? They're already pretty interactive in the sense that you can move around in them, but as a small business or as a marketer, how are you leveraging these to be more than just showcasing your space, which is basically what this class is about. So tell us a little bit about the process of, bringing these types of photos into Photoshop and working on them.
Yeah. So there's two ways you can do these edits. When you're looking at that sort of flattened image that we were looking at, so it's basically a sphere and it's just been flattened out, like you flattened it on a table. Everything, all the edge pixels in that flattened image are part of a seamless tile. So all the pixels across the top match up into the top, all the pixels across the bottom match at the bottom, and they all sort of pinch. And then the right and left pixels wrap around like a cylinder. So any edit you want to make that doesn't touch the edges, you can make in Photoshop just on the flat image. So that's where we'll do a lot of, clone stamping, spot healing, any of your Photoshop tricks you can pull out and work on the image there. If you want to edit like the tripod, for example, which is always at the bottom, or you want to take somebody out and they're off to the edge, or you want to change anything on the edges, that's where you have to use the 360 tools in Photoshop, because you have to basically have Photoshop rewrap the image in a sphere, show you the image in a sphere, and let you change or add artwork and do stuff into the sphere, and then Photoshop will remap it back into that shape. And so that's really the crux of the whole course. Is like, how do you use these tools to sort of wrap it back up, look at a point, make a change, and then have that mapped back into the sphere. And it's not hard, a couple steps, and then
it sounds like a very crazy, intricate process, but it sounds like you're going to teach.
But the tools have, they just have, they've made it so great. Like you move around in Photoshop, or in the After Effects course, which is the sister course, you move around in the image just like you would on Google Street View or in Facebook. Like you click with your orbital tool and you just look around, find the scene you want or the image or where you want to put your logo, sort of lock it in place, and then do your edits there. So it's totally doable. You sort of interact with it while you're editing it.
Yeah,
it's a whole new sort of idea.
And then ultimately, you're kind of experiencing what people experience when you put it out into the world. You're basically doing it while doing what they will experience.
Yeah. It's kind of fun. Like you might move around and go, oh, it would be cool if I moved over here and I saw like this thing.
Yeah.
And then you go add it, save it, load it, and then you made it. It's really cool. It's very satisfying.
Let's look at a couple before and afters.
Oh, cool.
This is actually our old studio.
Yeah. So I think this was in San Francisco. I was one of the other people who brought my 360 in. And so I was doing a class here. I think I was doing Sketch.
I think this was the Sketch class.
Yeah. Prototyping and stuff. So basically what I did here is I just set the tripod on the table, took a picture. You can see the producer in there, Jim, and my wife in the background there. And on the wall on the right, there was no logo in there. So then on the next example, what I did is I took the Creative Live logo, I put a light burst behind it in After Effects, just to sort of burst it out a little bit. And then I put our logo in place of the tripod down on the table. So when you load this whole thing into a viewer, you can look around and it looks like there's a Creative Live logo, in the Creative Live studio.
Yeah. And so can you tell me a little bit more about, does Photoshop kind of create that curvature that you're seeing automatically, or is that what you're kind of learning how to do in the class?
Well, Photoshop will create the curvature for you. It has a 3D tool. They call it a spherical panorama, and
Okay,
it basically takes your layer and it enables it as a 3D layer. So
got
then when you click and get your move tool, it turns into an orbital tool,
it. Okay,
which is just a fancy word for I want to spin around instead of
yeah,
moving in,
yeah.
X and Y. And then you can just move around, and it looks like you're looking at your photo through, Facebook or Google Street View. And then you just sort of move it around. So in its simplest form, you just take your layer, right click and say load as a spherical, and becomes a 3D smart object layer. So it is that quick and easy. And then adding in more and more stuff, your color correction, all that kind of fun stuff. You can just make it, you can just do as many composites and add new artwork in there as much as you want. And then to save that out, you just simply go back to the 3D menu and say export a new panorama, and you'll get a new flattened file. And that flattened file is something called an equirectangular, which basically just means that the width is twice the height. So if there's 3,000 pixels across, it's only 1,500 pixels tall. So you imagine that, wraps around to the top and bottom, and then wraps all the way around to make your ball. And that's it. So if you have something that's twice the width and height, you can take any layer. You can make your own in Photoshop. Just make a canvas, load it as a panorama, and then you could paint in there and make your own 360 from scratch if you wanted.
Yeah, that's so cool. Let's take a look at another couple before and afters.
So this one was kind of fun. So this is on OSU campus. And this sort of follows along the lines of when we were talking about adding in the hours of operation for the microbrewery. So this is the original image here. And then when we go to the modified one, it's hard to see in the first one, but I'm standing there with my nephew and, we're holding up the camera. And here I just added a bunch of text, added a logo, just sort of a prototype for being able to set up some images for a campus tour. So if you want to go around and see some of the cool things at the OSU campus, we could do that. Remove people, cleaned up some of the, gum and stuff on the ground. And just so many cool things you could do. We add a little light burst on the sun and put some orange in there. Again, all the cool Photoshoppy stuff that you would do.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think we're going to jump into a little clip out from the class where you're going to show us a little bit more about editing in Photoshop, so we can see a visual and get an idea of what more we're going to learn in the class.
Cool. Hi, and welcome to Retouching and Compositing 360 Photos inside of Photoshop. My name is Converse, and the idea behind a 360 photo, or a virtual reality image, is the fact that we can actually look around inside of them. So using different viewers, whether it's on your desktop, Facebook, social media, websites, these allow you to basically click and drag and sort of look around inside of a photograph in any direction. So what we're going to be doing today is taking a look at how we can edit these ourselves, maybe add some branding like a logo down here, and just introduce new artwork, make color corrections, and do all of this work inside of Photoshop. Now, you may have seen images like this on sites like Facebook. Facebook has billions of users, and they can all look at 360 photos automatically. They even automatically hook into a phone's accelerometer, so people can actually look around by moving their phone, which is pretty cool. You may have seen these on Google Street View. You can actually upload these images as part of your Google profile, so these can be hooked right into Maps or be part of your profile page. This is actually the reason that we built this particular project in the first place, was for Google Street View. And of course, you may have seen 360 images on any number of sites, whether it be for hotels, buying a new car, looking at different establishments, restaurants, finding Airbnb locations, resorts. The possibilities are just endless. So what we're going to be doing today is taking a look at how we can modify these images. So when you look at a 360 image unwrapped, or sort of in its equirectangular state, which is a standard square photograph, this is what they look like here on the left. So they look very distorted. What's happening here is this is the sphere sort of being unwrapped and flattened. So if you can imagine, all the pixels across the top get pinched together to make the apex, or the top of the sphere. All the pixels across the bottom create the bottom of the sphere, And the pixels on the right and the left actually match around when you wrap this around into a sphere. So all of the edges in this image are part of a seamless tile, which means if we want to start making some edits, we have to make sure to not touch any of the pixels on the edges. And if we do want to change the edge pixels, like add the logo here at the bottom, we have to do it with Photoshop's 3D tools so that we can have our new artwork mapped into that original sphere. And that's really the whole sort of reason for this course. Not only to show you how to do some of the retouching, but the compositing, adding in new artwork. So we added the hours across the top here. So that's kind of like a little Easter egg. Somebody can look around inside the photo and see the hours of operation, find the logo. You can add any number of additional art pieces to a 360 photo. So in this course, we're going to be starting with our original image. So what I did is I took a series of bracketed shots, dark shots and light shots. The darker shots to get some of the detail up in the ceiling, the lighter shots to sort of counterbalance the bright light coming in the front of the store and the bright light shining off the floor. And one of the other interesting things we'll talk about, when you're taking a 360 photo, a lot of cameras will take the entire environment in one shutter stop.
All right, so that gives you a little taste of what you're going to learn, what VR photos or 360 degree photography is. And Chris, tell us, we actually had a couple questions coming in while that video is playing, one of which was, how do you take old pics and create and complete a 360? And with that, this is coming from Sridhar on YouTube. Do you complete, excuse me, I'm sorry. Also, would it be clicking and sealing as well as completing the stretch, or do you pan the camera? So I think Sridhar is wondering, are you stitching photos together, or are you using a 360 cam in this class?
Gotcha. Well, to go back to the first part of the question, when you say like old pictures, I'm assuming you mean like maybe you took a bunch of individual shots, like kind of looking around in an environment. So those pictures aren't going to have any curvature to them because the camera's going to be attempting to sort of flatten that out. So there are apps I talk about in the class that you can get for your phone or anything that's got a camera in it. And so what you want to look for is to see if you can load those images in and have one of those apps stitch those into a sphere for you. You can go into Photoshop and maybe create like a 7,000 by 3,500 pixel canvas, make it a sphere, and then you can manually place them in and crop the edges, or that would take quite a bit of time. I would look for something that you could use quickly there. And on that note, there are apps that you can use, so you don't have to buy a camera, and just with your phone you just sort of scan around, and you are basically being the rotor there, just moving around and finding every image, and the cameras will stitch them automatically. There's a lot of cameras out there. The one that I use in the course is the Ricoh Theta. This is the one that I like, but there are tons of them out there. There are cameras from Samsung, Google, GoPro. And the interesting thing is these cameras have a huge lens on both sides that take a little over 180 degrees on both sides at the same time. So one shutter stop, and the camera will stitch them together in real time and fix the pixels on the sides. The bottom will have a little bit of a gap where the actual bottom of the camera is, but everything else will be completely stitched in there for you, which is pretty amazing. And the other thing that I highly recommend using is I got this little extension that goes on the bottom of the camera, and I use a monopod, which looks something like this. I can actually, extend this and make it really big.
Yep.
So I'll use this and set this up. And the reason you want to have this little extension is you want to put that on the bottom of your camera. You want the tripod to be as far away from the bottom of the camera as possible, because that picture is taking the entire environment. So if you've got a big tripod with a big, maybe like a trigger gun handle on it, or anything that's sort of sticking out, that's going to be magnified. So now you've got a lot to remove for the tripod. So you want the tripod to be as tiny as possible. And then the other thing, we just ended the video here where I was standing there with Joe, the owner. And one of the things that I used to do when I was shooting is I would try to hide somewhere from the camera, because it takes the full environment in one shot. So you're like, most of the time you're going to be in it. So if you can't hide in like a closet or under a desk or something, then you're going to just be in the shot. And I would spend so much time trying to clone myself out. Then it occurred to me like I could just take 2 shots and just move myself. So, go, 180 degrees, stand over here, take the picture, move over here,
Yeah.
take the picture, bring it in Photoshop, mask out in 2 seconds. So I talk about that in the class too.
And it's only probably after doing a couple of those
Yeah.
that you would even have that realization.
Yeah, you're like,
That's part of being a
while you're cloning,
photographer
you're like,
and a
how can I
creator.
possibly not have to do this? And you're like, I could just stand somewhere else and take another one. Yeah. And the other thing too that you can do. So some cameras can take a raw image. So this particular camera, and there's a Samsung and a Google camera that can take a raw image, which people who are into photography are familiar with their DSLRs, or mirrorless. With these, Ricoh, for example, makes a plugin for Lightroom, because when this takes a raw image, you get this giant picture with 2 circular images, one from each CCD chip in there, and it has to be merged back into that equirectangular image. So Ricoh has a plugin for Lightroom to do that if you want to shoot raw. What I tend to do is, since you're taking the entire environment, that also means you can't really set a reliable ISO setting because there's going to be too much
Yeah.
light somewhere. So I will take 2 or 3 shots and I'll just do the bracketing. So in this class, I had taken originally 3. I only gave 2 sets of brackets in the class because we didn't need the middle one. But I did a dark, a medium, and a light with me and Joe standing on one side, and then a dark, medium, light with us standing on the other side, and put them all together so we could basically create that more of an HDR type image from a camera that was just shooting straight JPEG.
Totally. There's so many little like things that you've, I'm sure, learned as you're learning this new technology that have made your workflow a lot easier, and just little tricks that for anyone who's getting started in 360. Seems like this class is really going to help you get past the little things that you learned and the hiccups you learned in the beginning, and really start to speed up your workflow a lot.
Yeah. And there's part of a learning curve too, like you were talking about when we first started, and that is, people don't think they want these, especially, smaller businesses or even places that have a physical location where you would want people to go. And then you make something like this and you put in a logo or a little bit of text or something interesting, send it to them on Facebook, maybe like a private post, and then it clicks to them.
Yeah.
They're looking at their environment, and next thing you know, they want 20 images, and you're very busy. so yeah, there's a little bit of a learning curve, and then everybody's going to want it.
Yeah, and this is also a technology that most small business owners are not going to know how to do. So as a video editor or a photographer, getting into 360 imagery and video right now is a really great path to expanding your work as a retoucher and editor. So that brings me to, we're just about out of time, but I wanted to just remind everyone you have another class coming out next week, which is all about editing in After Effects. So tell us a little bit about that before we sign off and send everybody over to watch this new class.
Yeah. So basically, we do a lot of the 360 work we're doing in Photoshop in After Effects. After Effects has some tools. After Effects is completely non-destructive. There's a few little gotchas in Photoshop, which I cover in this class. So After Effects is sort of the next level if you want to go a little bit further, maybe animate them, add special effects, add, sunsets and things in there that, would be a little more difficult in Photoshop. But using the two together is just really powerful. So that's, if you love this, then, watch that one too, and just see all the things that you can start to do with VR photography.
Awesome. Well, like I said, that 30 minutes went fast, and we're super excited to have this class kicking off today. So if you're watching on social media, make sure you tap the link I've dropped in the comments. And if you're watching on the class page, make sure to refresh your page, and the class will be starting here in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Chris.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Pursuing creativity is arguably the most practical thing that you can do.
We humans are adaptation champions. That's what makes us human, our ability to imagine.
The hard part is to look inside and say, what are my invisible beliefs that I have about money? I wanted to figure out how it actually worked.
And you are really here because you became passionate about an idea.
What does it take to capture great photographs of birds? You have to be grounded in your cameras. You need to understand the technology.
Just like any band shoot, we're looking to capture great shots of the band themselves playing on stage. So the drummer shot, lead singer, guitars.
How do you even prepare to shoot with your phone? And then we're actually going to go into the edit.
Once you hit rock bottom, there's no place to go but up. You learn what's real. You learn what's needed.
In astrophotography, there is a great deal more planning involved because you are literally shooting in the dark.
We can't change others, but we can change our perspective.
Wow, that's a good way to start the day.
I had tears in my eyes.
If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline, it's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into Creative Live TV today.